This is the Dream Guardian in Baldur's Gate 3. Or at least it's the Dream Guardian you know if you've only played the game post-launch. For those who played Baldur's Gate 3 in early access, this was the Dream Guardian. This mysterious and all-important character was originally very different, and the changes Larian made during the early access period impacted not just the Guardian themselves, but also the entire main plot of the game. You're probably wondering how that's possible and what it might have looked like if the original Guardian was still in the game. Don't worry, as long as you're cool with spoilers, we'll answer those questions for you today. When Larian first released Baldur's Gate 3 in August of 2023, it became an instant classic. It was the highest grossing game of the year, won Game of the Year, and it set a new standard for quality for RPGs. The level of customization, creativity, and choice available to players in Baldur's Gate 3 is staggering. The story is next level, the turn-based combat is top quality. If you've played it, you already know it's a great game, and if you haven't, you should really get on that. But it wouldn't be nearly as great without all the feedback the developers received during early access. Running for an impressively long 3 years, the Baldur's Gate 3 early access period was a key point of the game's development. Over its course, eager players provided invaluable suggestions that shaped the direction of the project, and Larian themselves polished and fine-tuned the experience until the game was ready to launch. Compared to the full release, the earliest versions are virtually unrecognizable, and there are plenty of wild discrepancies between them and the finished product, but one of the most memorable aspects of early access, for many players, is that the game used to be a lot more, let's go with raunchy. No character was safe from the pervasive perversion of early access.
Open. Taste. Good. Lower.
And that includes the Dream Guardian, who was also known as Daisy, Dream Visitor, and the Dream Lover during this period. The changes to the Guardian started right at the source, during character creation. You probably know that once you've made your character in Baldur's Gate 3, the game sends you to a separate character creation screen and tells you need a Guardian. Choose one. That character becomes your Dream Guardian, who benevolently aids you through your adventures and keeps the tadpole in your brain from turning you into a mind flayer. At least until the Guardian is revealed to be a mind flayer themselves who has been using you from the start. But in early access, the game didn't tell you that you needed a Guardian. Instead, it asked, who do you dream of at night? This slight change immediately reframed your relationship with the Dream Guardian. They weren't a friendly force for good, they were meant to be sprung from the player's fantasies, someone the player was deeply attracted to, and when they visited you in your sleep, their personality reflected that idea. Rather than offering aid in a supportive and benign way,
I'll protect you.
The early access Dream Guardian was an unambiguously evil temptation.
Why are you fighting me?
Where the post-launch version of the Dream Guardian encourages you to use the tadpole's magic to protect yourself,
But only if you embrace your potential.
the early access version promised power and alluded to your potential like your success was a foregone conclusion.
The world will bow.
They said you'd lead an army and conquer the city of Baldur's Gate. You just had to give in to your most violent urges. And yet, if you did try to give in, something within your character resisted. More than that, it wanted to hurt the Guardian. Since this was early access and only the first of 3 acts were available, players never did get to find out why their character reacted so intensely to the Guardian. Sometime before the game was fully released, the story was changed, and all those old cutscenes were scrapped for ones that now appear in-game. The Dream Guardian we know today is still suspicious, but they also make a point of telling you that they're trying to protect you, and they don't try to flirt with you, until their true nature is revealed anyway. So the mystery continues to this day. Those who played early access have been left wondering what Larian's original plan was for the Dream Guardian and why they changed it so drastically. And while we don't have all the answers, we do have some useful information that might help us uncover the truth. The first and most mundane thing to note is that not everybody was on board for the unapologetic freakathon going on in early access. The sensuality on display was a bit much for some players, and Larian did tone it down across the board based on that criticism. Yes, Larian letting you romance a squid and a bear is them toning it down. So, the change in the Dream Guardian's demeanor could just be chalked up to that, right? Well, no, it's more complicated than just dialing down the dirty. What about all the Dream Guardian's promises of world domination?
You'll have everything you could ever desire.
What about our character's impulse to hurt them? As far as those promises of power go, it's likely that Larian wanted the Dream Guardian to be more immediately likable and less obviously villainous. Pretty much every character in Early Access was more aggressive than they are post-launch, and many Early Access players were tired of it. It only makes sense that if you're meant to trust this Dream Guardian, they shouldn't be encouraging you to stab randos and seize cities. When the Guardian is revealed to be a mind flayer at the beginning of the game's third act, it's meant to feel like a betrayal. So having them be supportive and helpful rather than flat out evil makes the twist hit harder. It also adds some nuance to your character's decisions. With the Early Access version of the Dream Guardian, it was very clear from the beginning that embracing the tadpole's magic was going to lead you down a dark path. But post-launch, the Dream Guardian makes a pretty compelling case that using the tadpole's magic will help you on your journey.
Use the powers your parasite gives you to convince them you are one of them.
Psychically manipulating people isn't evil, it's just a tool for survival. It can eliminate your enemies and help you learn more about the evil plot surrounding your character, or so the Dream Guardian would have you believe. But while these answers satisfy a few questions about the original Early Access Dream Guardian, it doesn't tell us why our character wanted to hurt them. Why did something in our blood recoil from them? And why did they think tempting us with violence was a good idea in the first place? Well, the prevailing theory is that during Early Access, players weren't actually controlling a generic character. Instead, we were playing the Dark Urge. For those that might need a refresher, the Dark Urge is one of the origin characters available to play in Baldur's Gate 3. Cursed with severe memory loss and an insatiable bloodlust, the Dark Urge must choose to either fight against their natural predilections or embrace them. Over the course of the game, you learn that the Dark Urge is actually a Baal spawn, destined to fulfill a dark purpose as the child of the god of murder. It's a compelling story, and it's one that you totally miss out on unless you decide to play as that character. But in Early Access, the Dark Urge didn't exist at all. They weren't a selectable character, and they didn't appear in the game at all. Or, hey, maybe they did. Maybe the wish to harm the Dream Guardian and the ability to literally strangle them were manifestations of the Dark Urge. If this theory is true, then it would mean that, at least for a while, Larian was planning on making the Dark Urge the main character of the game, and the battle between the tadpole in your head and the god's blood in your veins would have been a central part of the story. Post-launch, if you play as the Dark Urge, your tadpole doesn't really factor into the story at all. And frankly, the further into the game you get, the less finished that character-specific questline feels. It's still great, but anyone who's played as the Dark Urge knows that there's some missing content in the game's third act. That lack of polish could indicate that there were some major changes made to the story before launch, which would align with the idea that the Dark Urge was supposed to be the main character before Larian doubled back on the decision. Of course, having the Dark Urge be the default main character would have fundamentally changed how the roleplay in this RPG functioned. Instead of having a blank slate character to apply your own backstory to, you'd have been forced into a sort of twisted Chosen One narrative. For some players, that might have enhanced the experience, but for others, it would have felt like their freedom was being limited, and in a game so focused on choice, a diminishment of personal freedoms is the last thing the developers would have wanted. Still, the Dark Urge's story would likely have felt more complete if they were given more focus in the story, and their tense dynamic with the Early Access version of the Dream Guardian would have been an excellent addition to what is already a very frenetic, though sadly unfinished, plot. So, was the Early Access version of the Dream Guardian better? Let us know what you think in the comments, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what we put out next.